Structure, order, patterns. This is what architects live for. Architects take pride in observation and imagination. They find inspiration in everything and everywhere, whether it's context, the creations they do, the collaborators they work with, or craft, the creative process. But there is one thing which fuels their creativity and desire: a confab, a conversation. Jaquar presents Design Confab, a knowledge sharing platform which gives architects the opportunity to meet, share, and learn from each other.
We indeed take pride in stating that our mantra today is proudly made in India for the world. Every place in Bangalore, the places, the public places of Bangalore are actually private. They're all malls.
I coined this term, the bridge generation, because we grew up, you know, sort of believing that there was nothing more. But we were post-independence born, but we were still not the young people that all of you, many of you are here today.
We are all individuals trying to create our own name or our own formats.
During these calamities and immediately after, we witnessed that humanity at its best.
We all have young people in our office, and the main most love and excitement and curiosity comes from these people.
There must have been a time when you had to educate these people. Who is that enabler who made it possible in a place like Ajmer or Ranchi?
Today, every project is a fight. I mean, seriously, it's a fight. So it's never easy.
Design Confab is happening pan India and will now go global. Building communities is what we do. Bringing them together is what we love. Jaguar, celebrating the spirit of design.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's just a great moment for us to celebrate the Special Women's Day at ITP and Jaguar. We collaborated to create this series, which has really spanned across the country, the length and breadth, and you've seen the glimpses of that. And today is the moment for to all the ladies out there. I must really congratulate you and for being the strength that you are and the support that you've rendered to all of us. And I thank Jaguar for helping us to co-create this meaningful and credible platform. I know you're very excited to listen to our lovely ladies here, the most discerning designers of our country today. But before that, let me bring in one of the most talented professionals that I've come across, Mr. Mohit Ajela, who's really a big strategist. And if I have to really give a credit, it is him who helped us to create this. So let me bring Mr. Mohit Ajela from Jaguar Group. Mohitji.
Thank you, Vibhor, and good evening, viewers and our esteemed panelists this evening. Needless to say, we are absolutely on behalf of Jaquar Group, we are absolutely excited to be a part of this knowledge forum, which has some of the finest seven most influential women designers on one platform. And more importantly, would take this opportunity to wish Happy Women's Day to all our esteemed panelists and honored audience today. Believe me, for Jaquar Group, into 60th year of manufacturing excellence, it's been a journey of trust, wherein we have come a long way. And when it comes to celebrating Women's Day, the core thought came from, I would have to give the credit to one of the most legendary names in the Indian industry, architect Brinda Somaya, who just convened last year Women in Design 2020. Believe me, I mean that it was one of the most fabulous events that I attended, very well curated, and we got the opportunity to partnering with her. And the kind of insights that event led, needless to say, had many takers not only in India but across the globe. I think I come up with a core belief that any progressive society or a progressive nation has always honored and valued the contribution of women. And India being no different. I think that it's all across the globe that we are celebrating Women's Day. And needless to say, when it comes to the Indian subcontinent, when it comes to the build form, the contribution of women designers, women architects can least be overemphasized. And for Jaquar Group, now foraying into almost 60 plus countries, one of the most trusted names when it comes to complete bathroom solutions and now complete lighting solutions as well, we have always celebrated the spirit of design. And the only thing which I feel on this forum today, I'd like to share with our esteemed audience. One of the deliberations that came out in Women in Design 2020 talked about that somewhere midway, women designers lose their steam. I mean, one of the statements that Brindaji made, that not many of them, they really are able to reach to the heights to really lend their creative ingenuity. So I think it's very important, and I would definitely like Husna to take it up when she brings, because we have got such an illustrious panel, that the creative ingenuity of all these designers needs to come to fore, and that's their true contribution to the nation, because the nation definitely expects much more when they come back in the second innings. I mean, it's very gracious of women designers that when they take a break, but then again, when they rejoin, I think they add a lot of value to and to great. So without holding you for long, I would like to get Husna into the center stage. It's absolutely a pleasure and honor to have Husna Rahman moderating this panel today, me to be. Welcome, Husna, and over to you.
Just one moment, Abba is just joining. So welcome, Abba. She has got, maybe she can't speak. So to all the viewers out there, thank you, Abba, for joining. She's not been in good health, but she very kindly agreed to come here. So over to you, Husna, and you can introduce your panel, the lovely panel. Moji and I will take a back seat. Thank you. Have a great session.
I'm in extraordinary company today, all you lovely women, remarkable for the talent, for the accomplishments, and welcome to today's show. And I hope that our course of conversation will illuminate us as it will the viewers. What's interesting about all of us today is that we are distinct and we are diverse. And yet, the common chord that links us is the stream of consciousness, creative consciousness, wherein, and I say this on behalf of every one of us, that we see the world not for what it is, but what it should be. Not for what it is, but what in chillingly unambiguous times it absolutely must be. Today, we tell our stories, for if women don't tell the stories of women, who will? And these stories must be heard, for the time has come. For way too long, centuries, the history of women has been that of silence. We stand upon the shoulders of women whose dreams have been obliterated, whose ambitions have been thwarted. But today we have the voice. And I can't say that even 2 decades ago, this would have been afforded to us. So I am honored to be able to speak on behalf of women who can't. For centuries and even today, women in fields, women in factories, women in ivory towers and palaces, women in cities, women washing clothes by the riverside, women, just you and me, young women, old women, women across the board, women facing challenges of poverty, the lack of education, war, refugees. So we speak today. We speak on their behalf, and we hope that our conversations will be etched in the sands of time and people will see possibilities that are limitless. We aren't islands in the stream, are we? We are people who've been, like our buildings and our projects, constructed with texture, with feeling, with pattern. People who have today allowed for us to be who we are. poignant moments of our life, little pockets of our intimacy, which the world doesn't know, for they see us for the professionals that we are. Today, I'd like to take a moment to first understand the artists behind the artistry. So, may I ask Supraja, whose birthday we're celebrating today, to give us an insight into what made her the fearless woman we see now?
I said thank you, Usna, for the birthday wishes and thank you for celebrating it. I'm indeed privileged that I'm born and I have known this fairly early in age. I remember my father gifting me a diary when I was about 11 years old. And, on the dates, it's written Independence Day, so and so, but then it said International Women's Day. I was too young to understand, and this is pre-Google era to know what it is, but I just believed I was born for some reason. To tell you something, what made me fearless, or I am still fearless, is I guess that it's there in a lot of us. And I early on, my parents had a wonderful relationship, and they would discuss the menu, buy the vegetables together, do everything like that. And on one Sunday, they wanted to go buy vegetables, and for some reason, I wanted to come with them, and they didn't take me. We were in Delhi then, and I think it was Sarojini Nagar Market, if I remember right. I took a bicycle, went all the way, which must have been few kilometers, crossing probably some main crossroads. Just cycled my way and actually found them in the market and tapped at my father's back. And I still remember they both turned back, my mom's mouth open to give me a piece of my mind. My father just looked at her and said, "Don't." There was nothing said to me. We bought the vegetables. They, drove slowly so that I could bicycle back. And this was never talked about. I look back in life and I say, if had I been given a piece of my mind by my father or my mother, slowly, the fearless woman in me would have got suppressed. And I didn't realize then, obviously, but what makes me get up and just keep doing whatever I want without even sometimes even thinking too much is because yeah, I was never stopped. And I think my privilege is that I was born in a home where my father never differentiated between me and my brother. The gender didn't come up, even in the 70s. So,
incredible story. And I think these are the poignant moments of our life which determine way more than we can assess. Nandini, would you like to share with us a story of some kind?
I think all our stories are unique and we're always learning so much from each other's stories. I think my parents just set me off into the world and said, go discover it, and you have to learn how to do it on your own. And, if there was ever an emergency, I had to run down to those general phones and call them and say, this is the emergency. And they would say, sort it out. And if you're in a terrible situation in another 5 days, call us back. But I think, it set the stage for many adventures. It allowed me to work on Capitol Hill I was the first international intern to ever work there. And I remember the only Indian girl running around Capitol Hill giving, tours of Capitol Hill, which was quite ironic. I had to learn about the architecture of the building. Maybe that's where the love for architecture again emerged. I was on the rowing team in college. In spite of being 5 feet tall, I would be the coxswain, and I would travel with the team 4 o'clock runs, and we would travel all over the US to row. And I'm an Indian classical dancer. You learn so much from my Guruji through time. So I think it's all the life experiences. You kind of plug them together. And as Supraja said, we were really instrumental are your parents, that they have the faith and the faith in you that you would go out and be able to really face the world. They've equipped us with that, and always knowing that we're human beings first, we're very capable, and gender has never been an issue. It is who we are, and that if we put in the hard work and we're passionate about what we can do, we can really do anything.
Sonali Bhagwati.
Hi, everyone, and happy birthday, Supraja. Okay, so, I think as Nandini also said, parents play a very, very important role in really shaping you for what you become. And I have always seen my father, who had this great courage to leave a very, very lucrative career in a legal career and pursue his dreams. So I grew up in an environment where pursuing your dreams meant everything. Money didn't mean anything, I mean, money was just there as sustenance. So we never grew up in a place which was opulent, but we grew up in a place which was full of vitality, full of new things happening, uh, people taking leaps of faith all the time. And I think that is the kind of environment that actually shaped me into becoming whatever I am. And it's not me. I have two sisters, and they are equally successful. They're very, in fact, I can't say equally. They're very successful. They're very acclaimed in their own profession. And I think we all three sisters really grew up in a gender neutral environment. We were never given to believe that we were girls. We were just taught to be professionals. In fact, there were many times when people, when I was much younger, people would ask me that, you don't have a brother? And I said, no. I mean, like, why would I need a brother, So it was just such a strange question all the time, which I didn't understand till I had grown up a lot, So we grew up in this very, very forward thinking, very avant-garde kind of a approach to life. That kind of a home we had, So I come from a very forward thinking Gujarati family, and I give them full credit for actually pushing me at every turn to do what I wanted, not what they wanted. In fact, there were many times when I would ask my parents that, what should I do in a situation like this? So they would turn around and tell me that, think about this, think about this, think about this, but it's your decision to take. And I would find it very disturbing at times, because I wanted someone to tell me what to do, because that was an easier way out, but they just wouldn't do that. They would ensure I took my decisions, and to ensure I made them work thereafter, So that was what my sort of personal construct is in terms of and then of course I have to say that as I grew into finishing school, I would say I was a little bit of a black sheep in the family, because my sisters were sort of getting into these professions and I was still faffing around. And I just took a train, went to Baroda, from there took a bus, went to Ahmedabad, and I just went to architecture school. And when I went to Baroda, I applied for architecture school, but the entrance exam was all about math and sciences, which was my nemesis. So this is not on, So I took a bus and I went to Ahmedabad, and I went into SEPT, and I said, wow, this is where I want to be. And I will always pay that tribute to B.V. Doshi, because it was his place, his building, his architecture, his environment, which was so awe-inspiring to a 17-year-old, And it said that, yes, I will be an architect, but here and nowhere else. So I think that also played a very, very important role in me wanting to pursue architecture, and in me wanting to sort of take my career forward from that point on.
I mean, that's such a phenomenal story. And, I am an ardent admirer, as I'm sure we all are, of B.V. Doshi. And what really in this story comes alive is the power of space. Going to that school made you realize who you are and what you want to be. And that's what we try to do. I mean, materiality has the ability to speak to a person and touch the emotions in a way that very little can. So it just illuminates how amazing architecture is in all its glory.
It truly is.
Transformative.
Yes.
Kolika, love to know from you.
So I'm the youngest of three, and both my parents were working professionals, so there wasn't any big inheritance that transferred down. And I have to say, I would describe myself as coming from a very privileged background because both my parents were highly educated. And I think that was the biggest enabler that I have to, in fact, I think I have to thank my grandfather for that, because he brought up my mother in a way. And I'm talking about, my mother is now 74. So I'm talking about that many years ago when my mother was my age. And she was always brought up in a way as an equal. So there was no differentiation then. And that's, I think, what my parents brought us up the same way. I think for me, the biggest game changer when I was younger, I was, so while my parents came from humble backgrounds, they worked their way through. They put us into everything. You know, I used to ride horses. I used to fall off, get back on, fall again. And I think this ability to, where my parents used to say, look, eventually you have to get up, because, you know, obstacles are there not as stop signs. Obstacles are there for you to make a choice, and every time you hit an obstacle, you need to make a decision and keep moving forward. I was not shipped off, but I was lucky enough. I got a scholarship to go to a high school in England, because I was very passionate about horse riding. And for me, when I reached there, and my time, and I was 16 and a half when I got this opportunity, and I'm talking about 96. Nobody was sending their daughters. I mean, now it's a very big thing with people who have money. They'll send their kids for high school abroad. I'm talking about 1996, coming from, you know, having parents who are working professionals to say, you know, it's not going to be that Mercedes in the driveway, but actually we're going to spend this money to send you abroad to study, because education is so important, and that is going to be the building blocks for you for the rest of your life. So for me, what kind of brought me down to architecture, and I think aspiring to be good at it and being good at my professional, is the fact that I knew I had people believing in me. I think the most important thing daughters and women need are people backing them up and believing in them. And I think that was so important for me, that all the way through, even when I fell off that horse and didn't win one national, I got up again and then won 5 nationals in a row. It was the fact that I had people believing in me constantly. When I went to high school at 16 and a half, I went to a school in England where they were like 10 Indians. And I was reasonably bullied in a way, because, you know, I used to be asked things like, again, these are privileged questions, but yet I think no struggle is small. We all have our own set of struggles. You know, I used to be asked questions like, does your dad have an elephant? And how do you get, you know, from work, how do they get from work to, you know, anywhere else? And you caught on that the most important thing in life is to have a sense of humor, because I started the story with, yes, in the next semester, my dad's elephant gave a baby, and he's gifting it to me for my 18th birthday. So I think as a woman in this profession and in general, having a sense of humor and being able to stand up when someone is trying to put you down, but politely and sensibly, goes a long way. So for me, because I got to travel, by my mother, as you all know, my mother's a designer. She used to travel all over the world on projects. She made sure she took one kid every time. We saw the world. I have this passionate love for museums. Sonali talked about, inspirational experiences. And I think it's my experiences and the education I got that has really inspired me to choose this profession and inspired to be good at it, I guess.
Amazing story as well. I mean, I love your analogy about horse riding. My son is 7 and he is an equestrian as well. We go riding every weekend. And the other day, somebody said, "Why do you like riding?" And he said to them, because you have to stop fearing
Yes.
animals and anything. And the second thing I love about it is that you have to move with the animal.
Yeah, you have to become one.
Exactly. And I thought, aren't these recipes for life, to kind of set your fears aside and to go with the flow, to be able to be resilient under any circumstance? So I think animals show us so much that sometimes humans can't as well.
True.
There's a good connect there. How about Sonali?
Listening to each one of you, I was thinking, oh God, this sounds like my story. This sounds like my story too. So I'm going to just say all your stories are mine. And I'm just going to tell you 2 interesting things. One, my father set up his architectural practice in the living room of our house and was barely earning anything when I was born. So my mother had to work. She was an interior designer and was working for cottage industry. So she went out to work. So my dad just thought it was too inconvenient to send me to school and to try and set up practice at the same time. So I went to school first time when I was in class 2. And so essentially I was office school. And for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be an architect. So I think the two stories would tell you the obvious. The other story is that my dad, for whatever reason, had multiple cars but no drivers. And I to date don't have an answer why that was the case. So he had to drive us everywhere. And if I had to go anywhere and go out at night or go to a party, there were very few in those days, not like my kids. He had two well-trained police dogs because his best friend was in the police. And as the dogs would get a little bit, like when they would get 1 or 2 year old, they would give them away. And so my dad was always getting police dogs, and 5 years later, two more would come and two more would come. So my entire youth, I was known as a girl who goes everywhere with two huge German shepherds. So he just provided me with two German shepherds, and then the world was an open place. I could come back at 4 a.m. in the days when women never stepped out after 8 p.m. But the dogs went, and wherever I went, they were trained to wait outside. They'd get out of the car and wait outside on either side of the door. I could be wherever, get back in the car and come back. When I got married, I got a dog that went to sight with me. And I still have two huge dogs. So somehow the dogs are the enablers of my life. I no longer take them as guard dogs. I think a few people would be scared of me, not the dogs. But I've had very odd episodes in my life, I think, which have just allowed me to be free.
You've had such lovely stories. Honestly, my heart is warmed with everybody's truths, whether it's the dogs and the horses and the vegetables, the rowing, Bibi Doshi's architecture. Abha, we haven't heard from you. Is that because your voice is still bad?
I'm going to try a little, but I think I started riding my own cycle when I was 11 and went everywhere to school and everywhere on my cycle. Drove my tractor at age 16, and then a car, an old Fiat that my father had from the time I was 18. And I think for me, the most liberating thing was not having a brother. So I never thought that there was anything I couldn't do. And from the time I joined the School of Planning and Architecture, I never took money from my parents for pocket money, because from first year when I interned with some architect, and then a bunch of friends and we started our own SPA entrance tuition classes to doing interiors in Hoskas village on our summer breaks. I never wanted to take money from my parents. And for me, I think the School of Planning and Architecture was the most liberating space. Co-educational hostels, no curfew, and you would wake up in the middle of the night in the hostel and go brush your teeth, and Gigi Ganeshan would be brushing his teeth right next to you, and it didn't matter if you've crashed out in a boys' room or there were six boys, and six girls sleeping on the same in the same room. So I think the fact that at age 17, SPA gave you a liberated environment to grow up in, and I'm sure Sonali remembers that as well. We never thought that as women you had to be afraid of boys, and I think that's something that's continued through our architectural careers. We've never thought of us as being women architects, or like one of those challenged entities. We're as good as anyone else.
Wow, what a privileged group we are. And that's the first thought that comes to mind, because all of us have had the remarkable good fortune of never believing that gender is an issue of any sort, of having people in our lives who support our dreams and who give us the wings to fly. So, as diverse as we are, the commonality is even more striking. Uh, this year, the United Nations for Women's Day has created a theme which is Women in Leadership, Generational Leadership. And when we look at the statistics of policy making, we are at an abysmal 24.9%. It means that the world is still colored through the vision and perspective of a man and what he thinks the world should look like, because he's making the decisions. So there is no time better than now. Like our GB said, Ruth Ginsburg Bader, that women belong in where decisions are being made so they can affect the lives profoundly of people around them who don't have that power. So we need to make ourselves empowered enough to be up there, visible, vocal, and take a stand. Uh, as women who are leaders in our own right, in organizations that frame and contextualize lives of the people we work with, our clients, craftsmen in general, how do you see your position touch them?
Husna, I think to be for all of us, we definitely in privileged to be in the position of leadership, calling the shots day in and day out. As a kid, I remember being called dominating many a times. So um, I'm guessing it was just leadership where people weren't used to women calling the shots and going in and offering a plan. I feel privileged to be in a position of power and would like it to use it, to make a positive difference in people's lives. So, as a woman, I realized that hiring women professionals is very important because when they're very young, they've had a problem of being answerable to their parents, when they get married, to their spouse. Not everybody, like all of us sitting here, could call the shots, right? So I'm very aware of that. And I know with young mothers, one fine day they wake up and they say they cannot come to work. And I fill in for that, though it does cause a lot of difficulty in the office when these things happen. But I said, as a woman, if I can't cope up with this, where will they find a place? So that's one of the things I do. And in a leadership role, not related directly to women, is something what I do is in my art gallery where I work with a lot of artists. And even during the pandemic, we did, because I was aware that um, art is one profession where there is no full-time job. You're just working and hoping something sells and you make money. So I really use that position also well, and I must very proudly say we did very well during the pandemic in trying to move a lot of artwork and help others. And that was our single intention to do the show we did, Solidarity in Solitude. Um, and yeah, helping just women in all walks of life.
Okay. Sonali Bhagwati?
I would say leader or influencing people um, is something I look at as a position of responsibility. Uh, because I think the more you have as an influencer or a leader, the more responsibility rests on you.
Absolutely.
And how you discharge that responsibility is really important. That responsibility is to your colleagues, to your clients, to people who work with you, the industry partners. That responsibility goes across board. Also, I think it's really important for us to realize at all times that learning is a never ending process. So while you may think that you are calling a shot, but you are not. You are actually trying to put together people from whom you have a great deal to learn. I mean, every day throughout our lives, we are just learning new things. And unless we keep our minds open, and we continue to be like sponges, who keep absorbing information, absorbing things from people, we are never going to be where we want to be. So I think leader or influencer is a term I wouldn't like to use. I would like to use myself, or I would like to see myself as somebody who is wanting to learn all the time.
Absolutely.
And that learning is from everybody that you work with. It may be a colleague, it may be an intern in your company, or it may be a site person or a skilled worker. It could be just anybody who you come in contact with. Yes. So it's a learning curve. And that's the way I look at that. The more you learn, the better you become in terms of holding that responsibility that you're supposed to.
So we hope to touch the lives of people, to learn from them, as well as to enable people to possibly be more than they are in some possible way.
Yeah, like if I have something to give to them, I have a lot more to gain from them. And I think that is what calls for mutual respect.
Mhm.
So I think unless there is that mutual respect, you are not a good leader.
Agreed. Kolika, how do you see this issue?
So I am, yeah, a large part of the people who work for me in my office happen to be women, not because I'm discriminating against men, but I know I've had this chat with Sonali Rastogi earlier as well some time ago. But I just find that uh, in the current environment, I find women are more hardworking, they're better multitaskers, and we are a large bunch of us who are women in my practice, in my office. For me, I talked about I think a lot of women and young girls who come into my office, because we have a large, we always have 5, 6 interns, and for a practice our size, which is about 30 odd people, having an additional 6 interns is quite a decent size. And I think my biggest responsibility, because I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say that being a woman architect in this country has been easy, because it hasn't. And my practice is one where I have had no male figure by my side, and I'm not saying that's sometimes helpful or not, but I will say that there are lots of struggles that I have believed that if there was a male figure by my side, perhaps would have been easier. But nobody knows; the grass is always greener on the other side. But I think my biggest responsibility is to believe in people. And what I feel the most important thing I do is to make the people who work in my office is to believe that they can do better and they can do more. And that just doesn't just go to the women in my business who work for me, but also the men. And I think that's very important, because I think what we really lack is people who believe in us. And I think it's so, so important to have more and more people who believe in you and who are wishing to push you forward. Other than that, I mean, we work and have since, I think, in because I'm also a carpenter, and we'd had furniture factories for a very long time. One understands that one is privileged, and one understands that we've got some 40 odd master craftsmen who work for us, and some of who work for 30, 40 years, with my mother. And to understand where we come from and where we can enable them to do better and to do more, and not necessarily handicap them. I think there's a very thin line between handicapping somebody and enabling them. And I think that's, I feel, is my most important role where I sit today in my profession.
Lovely. Sonali.
We all talked about in the earlier round of discussion about our privileged backgrounds and our very gender neutral upbringing. As soon as I got married, I have experienced the other aspect of it. And Koilika just talked about knowing or not knowing about what a male figure by your side means. Especially as I'm married to one very charismatic, extremely dynamic, creative, talented, highly educated architect. Sounds like a good idea, but honestly, on gender equality, it's the worst idea I ever had. Because the very first building that we finished together, and I swear I did majority of the work, I swear. Okay. We won 3 out of 5. That time there were 5 IIA awards. I was 29 years old. I won 3 out of 5 IIA awards, International Architects Awards, for the very first building that we finished. And we went to Mumbai, fanfare. I got so nervous about standing there and speaking to a forum full of architects, voice quivering. We decided we'll speak equally. Will you speak 2.5 minutes? I'll speak 2.5 minutes. Yeah. Anyway, all that happened. Next morning, newspaper coverage, half a page. Mainstream media, in those days was covering architecture. Yeah. Pictures of the building. Talk about Manish Rastogi, his amazing education, which is, by the way, exactly the same as mine. And they said his wife also assisted him with the interior decoration. I don't know from where that information transpired like that, why it would transpire like that. Right. We were on stage together receiving, they were gracious enough that it was a partnership of 2 people. There was a medal 1 and medal 2 and given simultaneously. Yeah. So this was, and my husband is my biggest supporter, and he's a big feminist, perhaps even more than I am. But that I was so offended that I said, I'm just not speaking to any media people. And I think it was that day and 10 years, I refused to have my name in print anywhere. And because I wouldn't, my husband was also very reluctant because he says, if you don't, then the credit keeps coming to me and I can't do it. I don't want to convert idiots. I'm just going to do my work and I'm not interested in this media nonsense. It took him many years to convince me otherwise. It happens to date. It happened yesterday. I went for a meeting for the first time. There were many corporate people there, and my son, who's not an architect and not in our business, but he was the link. He is the one somehow through some friend had brought this project into the potential project into the firm. So he said, my friend's going to be there. I'm going to come with you for the meeting. And I've never been in a meeting with either of my parents and probably never will be except for this chance. So I just want to see how these meetings are. I said, come. So he and I went off for a meeting. We entered a room full of very smart young men, suited, booted, with belts, Emporio looking men. And then we sit down and one of those gentlemen who was probably 40, mid 40s says, so is anyone else joining? I said,
that's audacity.
No. Okay, so we ended the meeting and it was a brownfield project. So I had a lot of questions to ask about the project. Where are the services? What is happening here? What are the permissions? What is not? So as I was leaving, the same gentleman whispers to my son, your mom actually makes sense. So I couldn't understand that how at my ripe old age of 52, people still think I'm out there to talk nonsense. I don't understand. It clearly had to do with the gender because before I sat down, they asked if anyone else was joining. As I was leaving, they were impressed that I had made sense.
I love your personality.
So it's still happening. Yeah. And sometimes when we want to get a really big job, and it's a developer, okay, irrespective whether we have assigned the project to me or Manik in the firm, 100% of the time, I tell Manik, you go front because I want the project. I want Morpho to have fame. एक बार आने दो ना फिर दिखा देंगे कि who's doing the work. Because it's just stupid to fight this battle for me quite often.
Oh God.
It's just stupid. And the fact is the battle is always won. You get the client in, you get the project in, you start working, the right person works on it. If there were men fronting it, they disappear. And if the women leading it, fine. If Manik is leading it and some other woman architect is the second lead, fine. Whatever happens, reality takes place only after having gotten the project. Sometimes reality is blurred in getting the project. And I still think those gender adjustments and in being a gender positive firm, and I think pre-COVID, post-COVID might be some 10-20% different, but pre-COVID, we were 100 plus women in morphogenesis. And maybe now we are 80, 85. Post getting the project, there has never been a point of difference. But to get the project, we do play gender politics. We play it.
I'm absolutely amazed to hear your story. And disappointed that perceptions to this day, and there's so much conversation around this, but these deep-seated, stubborn stereotypes.
Husna, there are certain projects. Like if you're going to go to a hotel interior, it's a 1,000-room hotel. There's no question that a woman can't show up at the table. But if you're going to do commercial development of 8 towers in a 40-acre site,
right?
Only woman team will not buy the confidence, is my belief. I could be wrong. But an only woman team to get the project is not going to get the confidence.
My God, that just opens up for a...
There is a stereotypifying of women that they can be good at certain kind of things in this profession. I'm not saying they're not good enough, but they are only good at certain things. They're good at institutional work. They're good at interiors. They're good at houses. They're not good at everything. That as a stereotyping situation. This is my opinion.
Nandini, tell me what you think.
We were talking about leadership, and as I look around all the women and hear what they're saying, these are fierce women. I mean, people, we're in a very male dominated profession, but I do believe when any of us walks in and we're able to command a room with that amount of respect, there's something to be said. And I think that, it's really about women like us collaborating together. I think our greatest strength lies in that, so that we're able to lift this group of women who we're seeing walking away from the profession. As Koilika said, it's a very tough profession, extremely tough, but we are tough women. That's what we're made out of. And each of us has this incredible grit. It's very apparent. But what's really special that is women, we're also empathetic designers where, we understand context. We go back to, worrying about our construction workers, about artisans, as Supraja said. Very similarly, our studio was working very closely with artisans. So many were talking about that in this format. We're looking to lead with ethical transparency, so that, there's a certain standard and quality that we're able to achieve as a profession. And we're not treated as vendors constantly. And, we're constantly wrapped up into this contractual kind of designation instead of being treated like architects and professionals. Um, I think just for me, I used to be a lawyer, a corporate lawyer. And I remember when I entered a room as a lawyer, I would never be questioned about the advice that I was given. But if I enter the room as an architect, everybody thinks they know more than me. So I have a very simple philosophy: respect all professionals on the same level. I mean, we've all worked hard to achieve, that level of being able to advise. And so I think there should be that standardization. And I do believe that a collaboration amongst women like us will really give us a supreme strength in the profession.
I agree entirely. And over the past 20 minutes, I am so connected to you all. I mean, hearing your stories and hearing your voices has just actually strengthened my belief in myself. So I'm deeply moved by all of this. Abha.
I have a different point of view. I'm 50 now, and I don't recall a single time when I felt disadvantaged being a woman architect. There is no man who has to share the burden of getting new projects into our team, and we're largely women. But I honestly can't say that at any point for any kind of project I felt disadvantaged being a woman. We've worked with public works department engineers. We're working on, like redevelopment projects for wholesale markets and public projects, and not a single time where I felt that being a woman was a problem. And I think actually it's almost incumbent upon us, as all of us, I in a way are leaders in our own field, to propagate that the confidence to younger women, that it's you're not fight we're not in a, we don't need a quota, we don't need a special age because we're women. And the more we're able to dismiss these boxes and these glass ceilings in our own mind at our level, otherwise you can smell the fear. And I think for that it's very important for women to do two things, within women firms, to make sure that for project pitches, women are there for pitching for projects, and unambiguously and unapologetically. And the second is sites, because very often, even the offices that I used to work in an office where the male architect would go out and talk to clients and handle sites, and all the drafting, drawing, design work was taken care of by women architects. I've always insisted that women go out on sites, handle sites, go on scaffold. And when I got my master's, after my master's, I got the Charles Wallace Fellowship to train in the UK. I chose not to get another degree but I chose to work as labor on the Lincoln Works Cathedral Works Department, wearing overalls and on the scaffold. So I understood how to actually work with lime, how to work with stained glass, because it's important for you to know how to do it, to be able to talk directly to the laborer with confidence. Very often, because we keep women away from sight, we shelter them. It's a protective nature that, okay, you're a girl, you stick around in sight, I'll send the boy to handle it. Actually, it works against them, because then after a bit they lose the confidence to be able to go out on site. It's easier to make mistakes earlier on in your profession, or to ask questions earlier on. But if you've been shielded from sight and shielded from business development projects, it's very difficult after 5 years or 6 years or 10 years to be able to face those issues with confidence, because you feel you might make a mistake. And therefore, I think my policy is to throw the women into the deep water and make them learn how to swim very early on, and never feel disadvantaged for being a woman, and definitely don't feel apologetic for being one.
That's very empowering as a thought. And as a woman myself, I've never, I think, probably being so self absorbed in the creative stream, I've never really even conceived it possible that a man would look at me, if I know what I'm saying with the conviction and passion that I deliver my communication with, that he would look at me with eyes other than that of looking at somebody who he believes in or doesn't, rather than assign a gender to that face or that voice or that thought. So honestly, it's for me interesting to hear that some of us face that or think about it, because I've never really processed that as an option. And I think the younger generations should walk into a room, hopefully feeling completely unburdened by that weight. Very illuminating, different experiences that we have. Well, here we go, inviting, and albeit a little late, but nevertheless, inviting all the men to our wonderful dinner table. You see, gender equality is a man's issue too. It is not possible to liberate a woman without liberating a man. And I think that when a man feels the need to control less, a woman, by consequence, feels less controlled. When he feels the need to aggress less, because society has freed him from that stereotype, a woman will feel less aggressed as well. Instead of seeing gender as two polar opposites of the spectrum, why not see it as just shades of gray, where it's okay for women to feel fierce the way we do, or for a man to feel vulnerable, for a man not to feel he's the economic superpower in a home, and a woman to feel like, it's okay to be that person who goes out and fulfills her dream while her man probably stays home and takes care of the children equally. So, issue then, as women and our biology, then comes to our careers and also the need to raise our children, bear our children. It's a deep biological desire, undeniable in the force with which it springs from us. My question to you about that is, how do you create this delicate equilibrium between your forging careers and your womanhood?
You know, I think what I'm going to say connects my previous response as well as this response. I think one can only take responsibility for who you are. And I at least don't think I have the responsibility of doing transformational work on the opposite gender or working with their to what they need to do. It's hard enough for one to forge ahead in one's life, whether male or female. And I think some of us have the capability of advocacy and take on the world and take on the male gender and say, hey guys, look, and also some of us have the ability to be fierce. I actually don't believe in fierceness, nor do I believe it is my responsibility to transform the opposite gender. I believe it's my responsibility to get what I want to get, when I want to get, and how I want to get it. So, transformation of the other gender doesn't always happen by confrontation. For me, it happens by proving that it's a win win for all. Mm-hmm. Get the work, do it with brilliance, do it well, and obviously all win in that situation. The client wins, the architects win, the millennial who has worked on it win, and everybody wins. So nothing speaks nothing speaks for itself than a life lived well. As architects, a project done well.
Oh, yeah.
So whether I have to get that project by, I mean, they've always been pin-up girls, right? So if I have to do a pin-up man, and because I think somebody across the table might be a bigoted person, then it's fine. I'm good to use tactics. I think it's most important to produce the work well, to give a sense of pride and purpose to anyone, woman or man, who has worked on that project.
Yeah.
Similarly, talking about childbearing is, it's empathy has to be for anyone, whether it's man or woman, for whatever they have. Somebody may not produce a child, but some man may have two ailing parents and can barely ever get to work in time because has to take them to hospital, come here. So everybody has a life situation. Just a lot of people have a childbearing situation. And I, in that sense, was so desperate to come to work. I used to get bored out of my brains. I used to also have this inherent fear that if I don't go to work, I'll never go to work. Like so many girls don't go to work. So I brought the kids to work. And that was a page out of my own book where my dad put me in his office, but of course never sent me to school. I couldn't just go, till I was 8, or 7. But my kids came to work from day 40.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a crib at work. They came, they sat, they were in the crib, they cried, yelled, whatever, then thrown at someone else. But I think more than anything else, I used my social network completely and totally, right down to neighbor, best friend, my friend Manisha, who Koilika also knows. She and I had babies together. They even went to school together, same class as Sonali's daughter as well. And I was constantly throwing babies at her, and she was constantly throwing babies at me. And so not only mother-in-law, mother, sister-in-law, best friend, neighbor, like everybody, they were chucked at. And I was a very non-specific type of mother, like I don't really care, just I need to go to a meeting, whatever you want to do like that, no helicopter momming and saying this way, that way, whatever. We have had women, I don't think anybody has ever put a crib in the office like me, but we've had loads of people, loads of women drop kids off to their husbands who work at work because that day they have to go off, take a flight off straight from work.
Mm-hmm.
So drop the kid here, go to the airport. And I mean, I have 2 men now in office whose kids are almost every second or third day at work. So I think it's for me, I feel I've set an example where work is not a formal place where only work takes place.
Wow.
Where there is a lot of lateral movement. And one of the most experiential days at work every single day is our office Karwa Chauth. And there's a dress code for all men and women. And there is henna, and it's in the center of the office. Like we have this huge library in the middle of the office, which is all glass, which is visible to everyone. And that shamelessly gets converted into henna and mehendi and chart and whatever. And, and then we sing also. We sing Hindi movie songs along with putting mehendi and all that. So I think all the workplace isn't defined by a typical sort of male agenda. It's not defined by the formality defined in a male world. I mean, tuitions, maternity cramps, a board with English teacher for 8-year-old required, dogs coming to work because maid has gone away. So the dog comes to work. One of my senior architects, and now the dog is permanently in office only. I don't think ever goes back at all. So I think just making office a lateral way of life rather than a regimented way of life, accommodating life, how life is supposed to get accommodated. I think is the example whereby people set themselves free and allow themselves to express womanhood or manhood or any kind of life agenda.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's really inspiring. And talking about the dog, I have this. I was 3 when I came from Mauritius, and my only memory until that age of that beautiful island, apart from the turquoise water, is loving a dog. I can see him in my subconscious wafting in and out. And I've never had one after that. So I am determined after speaking to you, Sonali, to get him and call him Maurice, which is what Mauritius is in French, and have him as my beloved studio companion.
Good plan.
So, Lika, tell me, you have an unusual story there. I'd love to hear it.
So yeah, I mean, my life has been slightly unconventional. But firstly, I completely agree with Sonali. I think the biggest thing we can do in our life is not to discriminate against ourselves, because that's something we control. And as long as we think of ourselves as equal, I think we can pretty much do anything we want to. So I had, like I said, I went to high school in England, and then I got the opportunity. I went to college in New York, and then ended up in London working for Norman Foster. Finally decided I wanted to be a woman architect back in India, practicing here. So I moved back when I was about 25, and I had a bit of a challenging situation when I was in my late 20s within the family. And I was faced with, I wouldn't say a choice, but it was a difficult situation. And I then decided to adopt my niece and nephew, who are now my son and daughter, and much wiser than I am. And Sonali knows this because my daughter went to school with her daughter, and it was different, And I think while in your late 20s, you've got your friends who are getting married and proposals, and I'm not married out of because I didn't want to. I just never met. I met many men, but not quite. Never really met a man who could understand how I was positioning my life and where I was coming from, and how what I was doing was what I wanted to do. Along with my two children, who I am the primary caretaker and caregiver and provider for, not just as a mother, because I was a single parent. And but I was first a parent, so there was Anadia and Zoravar who arrived in my life, and then post that, 3 dogs in the duration also arrived. So one has been a parent to, to both of them and dogs. And I think being a parent had just enabled me to structure my life slightly different. And I think it's, I wouldn't give it up for anything. I think it's been a wonderful experience, whichever way all of us end up getting our children and, all that scenario. And I bring them up the way we were brought up. There's no distinctions. The only thing I think that scares me living in a city like Delhi is when your daughter's out late at night here, and knowing where the city is going to scares the hell out of you, and you have sleepless nights. But other than that, I think, and I agree with Sonali, I think being a man has its own set of problems, especially in a country like ours. And when I speak to some of the people who work for me, all the way from, people who work in the factory up who work in my office, there's a whole set of problems that, in fact, I would say is much harder than being a woman who is a parent and a working woman. So empathy, and that's a word we've used a lot, I think is the most important thing. That it's like a survival mantra. You must have empathy, because the more you give, I think the more you'll also receive.
You're completely right about these stereotypes not serving anyone, because the male feels so stoic, unable to express his emotions to his family, to his children. To simply weep because he's sad seems like he's just not a strong person. So I think that our society and policies have so much to do with that. For instance, the government assigns 26 weeks for a woman maternal leave, but nothing for a man. So the ramification of that child growing up is, A, not to see his father as much, which is his or her father's. The child will not see the father, and that has a huge impact, because I think they have their own set of values and style of loving for that child. And also the child grows up then reinforced in the belief that the mother is the caretaker and the father is the provider. So just to loosen those boundaries, I think we just provide for a happier family, community, and country. Nandini, what do you think about that? You have 2 young children, so you're in a juggling act right now, aren't you?
Well, I'd first like to say, I think men, both in my personal and professional life, have been of great value. Whether it was my grandfathers, who were both in the army and educated, and as so many of us said, all our grandparents had such a profound impact on us. And I think even who I am today is much attributed also to the men in my life and to the men I work with. Whether it's my father, who's a cardiac surgeon, a very gentle soul and so kind in his profession, even at the age of 73 through COVID, refused to stay at home and ventured out into the hospitals to work with. And down to my husband, I remember I was almost 8.5 months pregnant in the fourth year of college in Mumbai. And there was no lift in the building where there was going to be 3 hour exam. So I walked up the 7 floors and you had to sit on a stool. They wouldn't give me a chair for those 3 hours, and I couldn't reach the table because my stomach was so big. And there would be that slow moving fan that you'd see above, and you just sit and give your exam. And I had 7 of these to go through, and it was the fourth year. And I remember coming home and I told my husband, I just can't do it. And he said, come on, you're almost there. It's 1 year more, and the baby will be out before that, too. So, I mean, you really need that incredible support of men as well. And lastly, the men I work with are incredible designers. They're incredibly supported, and to be led by my mom and myself, and to have them in the office makes us learn, makes us grow, and it enriches our practice as well. So I think for us, it's going to be a balance about how both men and women can get the best out of each other and really, create something unique, especially in the architecture profession. So I think we have to keep considering them, keep them on their toes, keep them challenged, and yet it's a balancing act through work and life.
I totally agree. The concept of today's program is me to we, but I would like to expand that to he with she. Make it an inclusive conversation because we can't do this alone, and I refuse to. Why would I? I need all the support I can get, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get it. My son is being raised in an environment where he sees his parents as equal partners, and I dare say he's going to feel the same way about his spouse. My daughter, who's going to do her master's in architecture at Yale, sees the family as being just that platform from where anything is possible. We take her to the highest watchtower and show her a limitless horizon and ask her to make her decisions for her life. So it is about togetherness and human rights rather than just the women rights we tend to get very fixated upon. Talking about the male influences, Sonali, tell us about the male relationships that have fortified your life.
I would say that I come from an extremely emancipated Gujarati family, and I have the good fortune to be married to somebody, a Parsi, who is from an extremely emancipated Parsi family. Parsis are, in any case, very emancipated and very well educated with great values. And what's very nice is that both our values individually were at the same platform. And that's what sort of made us so compatible. I mean, the way I grew up and the way Saurabh grew up, we have never considered each other as a man or a woman in that sense. We've always been equal. We've always shared everything equally in terms of resources, responsibilities, things that had to be done. So I have really never faced that situation of discrimination in any way within his family or in my family. So this was, I mean, as a concept, it doesn't exist in our environment, So,
freeing.
And in terms of kids, I mean, we both wanted a girl, and we adopted a girl, and then we had a boy. And anyway, the thing is that we looked after the kids, where we were both always in complete agreement. Um, you know, uh, with great amount of parental support, family support, and all the rest of it, what Sonali was saying. I don't think any of us can survive without that. So, the kids coming to office, kids going to moms, kids going to sisters, all the rest of it. So kids have grown up. But in my case, I am one of 3 sisters. I have two older sisters, and both are professionals. One is a doctor married to a doctor, one is a lawyer married to a lawyer. And so, this kind of a equality and the way of life is existing in our home from the very beginning. I mean, my sisters are much older, the kids are much older, but they've all looked after the kids like this.
Right.
And they both, all of them have been equal partners in work and in home with their spouses. So this is just a concept. I wouldn't even say it's a concept, it's just been a way of life for us, and there has been no other thought in my mind. And I can't even conceive a situation for myself where it would be otherwise, you know. Like, for example, my father used to be quite a role model for me. But what became much more of a role model for me now is my mother. Because after my father passed away about 4 years ago, my mother actually, at a grand old age of 91, started a business. Not only that, she's made a huge success of it.
Tell us more.
Yeah, she started this little food catering business. So she actually regrouped her strength and started doing what she was best at, that was feeding people. And food is great business, you know, probably better than architecture. And people love her for what she is, you know. And she has built relationships on her own strength, not on being my dad's wife, but as herself. And at 91, you know.
I can't even begin to fathom a part of that.
So that positivity, that focus, that dedication, and that zest for life is what is important, you know. That's what makes a human being.
Yeah. Amazing, Sonali. That is, I'm speechless, really. My huge virtual hug to your phenomenal mummy.
So she's become like my role model, everything I look up to, you know.
I do too. My God, she's incredible. You know, people talk about hanging up their hat and throwing in the towel. I mean, one chat with her, and I'm sure they'll be back in the saddle. Sips, tell me about yourself.
So my kids have grown up, and I mean, they're both still studying. But I think the whole responsibility of, you know, sort of balancing home and work becomes so much easier when you and your spouse are equal partners in every way.
Absolutely. And there should be no other way.
And there are so many times when we needed to go out, I would go out in the evening, and Surab would stay home with the kids, you know, and sometimes vice versa. So there were no rules, or there were no set sort of agenda. It was whatever the situation required. So we've never been like a man and a woman. We've just been friends, really, really good friends who were there for each other, to support each other, and for the things we both loved together, which was architecture and the kids, both.
Pure bliss. Goodness. That emotion is permeating all of us. We've all got a smile. Check it out. Amazing. And yet, it is stunning that we constitute a drop in the ocean. The story that people have is not as pretty.
I know. I think on that account, I feel I'm grateful to God.
130 years is what the United Nations says that women will take to even begin to match gender parity. So there are so many women there whose stories are completely the opposite. And just the fact that we're speaking today, I hope, will begin to turn those tables in a way that is necessary. Supraja, you tell me about your gorgeous man.
So actually, for me, I think for all of us, but yeah, motherhood has been my greatest and the most rewarding experience. If there was just one thing which completes me, my life would be motherhood. And raising, we only have one daughter, and raising her, I went through a lot of guilt because I I was used to my mum being a full-time housewife. I walked in home from school through tantrums, and my mum was always there for me. So that was a memory for me, and I tried to kind of see what I could do. So I made a lot of changes in my schedule. I remember when she was young and started school, I tried to come back home at 2 o'clock when she would come and eat lunch, and so take my lunch hour later, which led to acidity and had to drop. Tried to take her to classes and sat outside on the steps while she was in the class, and I did a lot of work, whether it's drawing or phone calls or. So I kind of always tried to juggle, and I just became a better multitasker raising her. I tried to take her for birthday parties and everything along with my work, drop her to a school bus and everything like that I attempted. I went through a lot of guilt. And I think yeah, for all the young women out there who raising children and trying to balance career, guilt, I would say, is a part of raising children and working. So don't feel bad. If you feel guilty, go ahead, feel it, but just keep getting up and working. And I've had extraordinary men in my life, starting from my father, which I had mentioned earlier, who never discriminated between me and my brother. I did not know that that's not normal till much later in life. And I'm again very, very fortunate to be married to someone who's incredible and most important, who respects women. I think not all women genuinely truly know how to respect a woman, you know, and that I'm again very blessed with. I had a lot of freedom in my life through my marriage. And obviously, with the freedom, I had responsibilities, what I could, and I think I lived it beautifully, been very privileged. And I'm trying to say there's so much said by everybody. I think I'll go around here and
Yes,
let.
it's
Yeah.
just the people in your life and your daughter, who I know has grown into a fiercely ambitious and incredibly intelligent girl, thanks to you. And, your ability to show her that she can fly. And you always told me you used to make her visualize the flight.
For me, it was always a visual that, I will let you out free into the world and go live your life. There are no rules. I call the rules put by the society as a checklist. And I've always told her that in Indian parenting, in Asian parenting, when you have a child, if it's a girl, if it's a boy and it's girl, the dreams are different. When you have a son, it is like, you need to educate him well and he needs to be an IS officer, entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. But when you have a daughter, you educate her well, all that is there, but then you say dhoom dham se shadi karna hai, bade ghar mein shadi karna hai. I told my daughter, your dhoom dham se shadi and bada ghar shadi is not in my checklist. You go live your life. And she's doing it. She just relocated to Berlin middle of pandemic from Boston, and we were like very impressed and saying, she packed her bags, just moved 2 bags and moved, and I said, just go live your life. So, and I think she's got a good example from seeing how our marriage is and how much my husband respects and lets me be who I am.
I think from the day my daughter turned 20 days, I took her to site, like, and she's grown up virtually on my sites. And what was interesting is that I was working on a very, very corporate project for Deutsche Bank head offices. And she was 4 years old. And all the bankers who I thought would be very stuffy with their business suits were completely fine with me taking a 4 year old to site. So I think sometimes you just have to, sometimes we underestimate our clients and we try and conform. And they actually are quite okay with us being, uh, you know,
We are.
non-conformist. And in my studio, there's been an architect who's had a baby. Her baby came to our office from day 3 months till he turned a year and a half, and he celebrates every birthday party in our office because it's a right of he feels entitled to. My daughter virtually grew up in the studio using all our stationery and had a little room painted lavender and pink, and her school bus would drop us to school. So I think I agree with what Sonali said. Is our offices, our studios have to be very, I mean, completely conformist if we want to be architects. And the good thing is that our profession allows us to do that, and we should just enjoy that. And I think the fact that we all, I have a daughter and she's 19 and she's now studying architecture. And I think the reason that all our children are turning out to be independent, strong minded individuals is because they've seen us take decisions. And I think that's the best legacy we can give them rather than being helicopter moms. So it's fine. I think the more we engage, we allow our children to take decisions for themselves, it's empowering for them.
When I had my first one, I had just started my career, and I would take her to the office and she would sit in a corner reading a book. It's only years later that I realized, when she started to enjoy architecture, what a profound effect even the background noise had on her. How she'd actually, through osmosis, just allowed for all of that energy and thought to enter into her being. Uh, if she takes a photography class at Parsons, she'll say, "Mom, I remember we did that shoot at your site, and the photographer was kneeling at different angles, and he was playing with the light and shadow." And that's how profound being six can be. Nothing is lost on those little brains. In fact, it's just all stored in layers of beautiful memory, which emerges when they need it on call. With my son, I was a much older mom. There's a 16-year difference. And older, more tired, work momentum higher. I actually made a room into a little, sleep room and rest room for him. I decided to feed him exclusively for 6 months. So I could not extricate for him for that entire time. For his well-being in the future, I decided he's going to be, my little joint at the hip baby. Everywhere I went, he was with me. There are people who today say, "Husna, I remember you walking to the office with your 3-month-old." I have faded memory of that. And I'm like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "Yes, you came in with your kid." And I'm like, okay, I must have, because that was important to me as much as it was meeting you. And I would not, in any which way dilute one for the other. So here we are.
So I just wanted to say that I wanted to share one incident when I had my daughter was 1 year old and my son was 4, and I was diagnosed with the last stage of cancer, and I had to start treatment with almost no possibility of living, and now I'm well for the last 19 years. And the first question I had, and to date, like sometimes we remember and we are now able to laugh over it. The first time I had said to the doctor, "Oh, so as soon as I start chemo, I won't be able to have any more kids." And so the doctor said, like, "Do you have kids?" I said, "Yeah, I have a boy and a girl." So then they're like, this was in America, and they're looking at Manit and they're going, "Really? Like, that is the question? Somebody who's just been told they have stage 4 blood cancer, and they want to know whether they can have 2 more kids after they have 2 kids already." So it was I always wanted to be a full-time workaholic architect, and I always wanted to be a full-time childaholic mom. And I mean, 2 handful, I would have loved 4, I would have loved 6. And as long as they're both in part of life, you sail through managing them. And on that note, I'd like to thank you all. Unfortunately, I had another commitment. This conversation is just so amazing, but I have to leave right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Husna. Thank you, everybody.
And you know what, Sonali's actually made me think about this conversation. I have no idea where we are going with time. Does anybody have a clue? I mean, I'm enjoying this so much that I haven't looked at the clock.
We're an hour and 29 minutes into it, Husna.
Very fast and fiery round. Just one word answers, just to keep it fun and frivolous for the last few minutes. Kolika, a woman or a man who inspires you?
Brinda Sumaya.
Lovely. Subs?
Barack Obama.
Bhavna Kant, she was the first jet fighter pilot for Republic Day.
Sonali?
Actually, my mom, but that's closer to home. But otherwise, one person who I didn't like her politics, but I admired her as a woman was Indira Gandhi.
Abha?
I was going to say Indira Gandhi as well. I'll take Jawaharlal Nehru.
magic wand moment. I mean, you have a magic wand to do anything you want with it. What would you do, Kolika?
Remove financial inequality.
So
I would want food portion size to change in America because
love
it's
it.
spreading all over the world. Yeah.
Nandini,
Justice for my Indian farmers.
Sonali,
Uh, Tough one. One magic wand. I would like to say united we stand.
Abha.
I would like to get rid of all parochial attitudes in both men and women.
Absolutely. Your favorite stress food. Who are we without our binges, aren't we? Nandini.
Rajma chawal for me.
Oh gosh, aam papad. I love aam papad.
I would try that combo because I love each independently. Oops.
Idli sambar.
Kolika.
Egg fried rice.
Sonali.
Medium rare steak au poivre.
Full beef.
Ali, you're too
Not buff.
A woman, Nandini, you'd like to take to dinner. An exciting romantic dinner.
Well, I think somebody who's dead, I'd love to go back and take Frida Kahlo.
Mm. Good conversation.
Yeah.
Oops.
I think just one woman.
Menage a trois, if you like.
If I could take 2, 3, I mean, Michelle Obama would be on my list for sure. Mahua Motra would be on my list for sure. Sudha Murthy for sure.
Okay, I'm taking Aung San Suu Kyi.
Ah. He'd love a dinner date right about now.
Burmese food.
With the pressure that she's under. Kolika.
Jacinda Ardern. I think it's awesome what she's doing. I mean, seriously. But definitely Michelle Obama as well is topping the list.
Yeah, I know.
And actually, Ellen DeGeneres, actually, just to add the sense of humor into it, you know.
Oh, that'd be great. Sonali.
I would have said Michelle Obama, but so many other people have taken up.
It'll be a big dinner party.
No, ladies, I've enjoyed this so much that I think we should have dinner together sometime.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can you make sure Michelle Obama's on the list?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to call her tonight and tell her to be there. It's just the best. And I could go on. I mean, 1 hour, 20 minutes. And I thought that, I'd cap it at 45. The concept of time doesn't exist when you're in stimulating company.
Another great person I would love to meet, at least, if not anything, is this lady Arunima, who lost both her legs but climbed the Mount Everest. I would love to meet her.
So now we're just getting Jaguar to organize a trip for all of us and all the women on our list for a dinner somewhere exciting.
I've enjoyed this. I feel I've gotten to know you. I've seen a lot of you before. I've had conversations with some. But today I think I've cut through those layers wherein I just seem to have this informality and understanding of the women that you really are. And I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Husna. Thank you, everyone. Great connecting.
But before we wind up, let me just get quickly, Mr. Mohit Ajilak. Mohit, you want to say a few words? I mean, I'm a bit speechless.
Thank you. I know. Thank you so much. I think, Husna, you were absolutely amazing, brilliant as always, and all the panelists. I mean, for sure, in one evening, one session, I could see that everybody could let their hair down, and I think it was very informal. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to more interactions. And thank you, Bibor, for being such a good host. And amongst friends, we look forward to definitely catching up. Abha has definitely given me a cue, and definitely will take care of that.
So, with your permission,
thank you so much.
My 2 cents. I don't know. वो कहते हैं कि I'm speechless. I mean, what an incredible story. I mean, I'm moved to say the kind of respect that you give to men as well. As strong ladies, as strong women, I think the world of design is in very safe hands. And we are here to make progress, and all the young, generations. I mean, they should learn from it. And I just thought, in the meanwhile, I can take notes, and I just have to read this for you. We can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and equality. We can all choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Collectively, we can all create an inclusive world. Thank you, everyone. And this has been by far the most fabulous and spectacular conversation. And I think, Husna, as a Sutradhar, you have done such a brilliant job. Getting each one's story and your story, everybody's story was so amazing. I think people at ITP, I mean, I have to say, as we move back into normalcy and webinars will end and we will meet each other soon. But I have to say this, it's almost like 1 year have done so many webinars. This has really moved me, ladies. Really, really. I mean, what an incredible story. You bring so much of smile, so much of confidence, so much of warmth in each of us. And you make men also very privileged. Thank you. And what do I say? I think, as I said earlier, we will do a great, great cover story on each one of you together. And Moji rightly said and agreed that Moiti, you can't, it's in a public forum. So we will really call out for taking all these lovely seven women and be a good host that you are. So all of us from here at
Surely,
ITP,
surely.
at Jaguar, and all the team behind me who have worked tirelessly to put this session together. And please, you'll see this particular webinar is doing lots of noise on the social media. And thanks you once again. Thank you, Sonali. Thank you, Supraja. You have a great evening. Once again, a very happy birthday. Thank you for parking your time here. You said 1 hour. You went on. Such a nice lady you are. Thank you very much. Nandini, absolutely wonderful. Husna, tremendous. Koilika, thank you. Thank you once again. And my regards to your mom. And Sonali just left. That's fine. Thank you. And thank you once again. Wonderful.
Thank you, Vibhor.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mohit.
Thank you. Pleasure. Absolutely.
Bye.